Trump's inaugural address. Let me give you an analysis of the fundamentals of this speech. Let's start with the most fundamental and abstract, which is the epistemological point, which is that we should have robust discussions and debates about policy, not worrying about political correctness, and also at the end of the debate and discussion focusing on the fact that we are trying to achieve a worthwhile end for all of us. So the way you try to achieve and find out the truth is through open discussion, sincere and frank, hopefully with respect, without ad hominems, which have happened in the past. The second most important fundamental of the speech is his ethical position, which is self-interest. For an individual, that question is fundamental. Who should be the ultimate beneficiary of your actions? He's saying implicitly the individual, if it's a person, and if it's a nation, the self-interest of the nation. On that, Trump is totally right. That should be our ultimate goal, to achieve the self-interest of the nation. That's why he says America first. Now, here's a very important point. Just because an individual or a nation is trying to achieve their self-interest and think that a particular action will achieve their self-interest doesn't necessarily mean that it will. You need wisdom on the subject of foreign policy, on the subject of domestic policy, economic policy, and we'll discuss that later. But here's some obvious examples to prove this point. A bank robber thinks that he is achieving his self-interest when he robs a bank, but as you know, generally speaking, they don't end up too well. The same as a drug addict. Big predatory strategies and nations in the past have thought that they achieved their self-interest by predation, murder, grabbing territory. Hitler ended up with putting a bullet in his head. He destroyed himself and his nation because he had a predatory strategy. So just because you think that something is in your self-interest doesn't mean it will. And one of the biggest mistakes is to assume that it's self-evident. What is in your self-interest is obviously clear. No, it's pretty complicated often, and you have to integrate the long-term consequences of your actions. If you don't do that, you're going to have a disaster because you really don't end up with your self-interest. You could end up destroying yourself. So let's examine the various areas, such as foreign policy and war and peace. Now, Trump is right to say it's not our responsibility to defend other people's borders, and we shouldn't be paying for it, and we shouldn't be interfering in their wars and their problems, and they should pay for it. And so on that point, he's quite better than Hillary or the previous administration or other administrations, even the Bush administration, where we were involved in other disputes that had nothing to do with defending our borders. And so I think he's absolutely right about we should focus on defending our borders and paying for the defense of our borders and not for the defense of other armies and borders. So that's a good point in Trump's favor. On domestic policy or economic policy, I think he has a lot of very good proposals that will help the key question, which is how to increase productivity. That's what you focus on if you want to have prosperity. You have to increase productivity, which means you produce more goods and services per hour worked, which means there's more goods and services for everyone, which means there is more wealth in the country. Now, the biggest way to increase that is to increase capital investment, because machines and know-how produce more efficiency, and so you can produce more with the same amount of work. However, there's other aspects that we'll discuss later that may not increase productivity. So the other way to increase productivity, besides increasing capital invested per worker, is efficiency through trade. So that is also something that we need to talk about. So Trump has proposed reduction of taxes to 15% for the corporate tax, for the individual, a 10% repatriation tax, territorial tax, a reduction in regulations. All of those things would increase capital invested per worker and increase prosperity tremendously. So all of those are good points. However, he's also proposed, not him, the Republicans, basically on his hint or take or trying to satisfy his view of helping the exporters and hindering the importers. The Republicans have proposed a border-adjusted tax, which, as I understand it, I haven't read the legislation, but as I understand it, it means that if you export something, you don't have to pay taxes on it, and if you import something, you can't take it as a cost of goods sold. So the importers get hit hard, and the exporters get favored. And so this is just another way of achieving protectionism, mercantilism, which most other countries think is a good strategy, like Japan thinks so, China, Germany. They're all trying to help their exporters. And the counter part of the coin to that policy is that they harm their importers. So they harm all their consumers and they help their exporters. I think that's a mistake. It's called mercantilism, and it's protectionism. It doesn't actually redound in your self-interest ultimately. The United States historically has taken the other side of the coin. Strong dollar, which means we'll favor our consumers at the expense of our exporters. So take your pick. Neither of these are really an improvement. Actually, the best thing is for the government not to be involved at all and let things, free trade, work, and that would be the best. But Trump has a proposal different than the Republicans, which is a border tax, just a tariff. That would be legal under WTO, and it would probably have reprisals. Now, maybe he's just bluffing, and maybe it's just a negotiating ploy to make better trade deals. I hope so. But both of these proposals that are trying to favor exporters and hinder importers create big distortions in the economy and will not result in the economic prosperity or in the self-interest of the nation as the proponents think it will. In fact, it will create a lot of problems. So there are some people in the Congress and that have some power that don't agree with that, and I hope they prevail. So this is what the situation is right now as far as the taxes and how Trump is trying to help the exporters and hinder the importers. And that's just accepting the theory of mercantilism and protectionism, which is a big mistake and actually never redounds in your self-interest. So those are the basic points as far as economic policy, trade, and investment. So on all counts, I would say that his position is much better than Hillary's on almost everything. So I think we have a better chance with Trump than we did with Hillary. And I wish him well, and I'd like to know your take on his inaugural and his proposed policies. Thank you.